I'm no fan of Prince Harry, but he's launched an attack on what he describes as, quote, the vile press. He's talking about, obviously, the tabloids in the UK. Now, his first day in court wasn't great. He talks about how the media has destroyed his adolescence and his later relationships. He was in the High Court in London. I think he's back there right now. Joining me now is the editor of Spiked Online, Tom Slater. Tom, great to catch up. You'd have to say day one didn't really go all that well for Prince Harry, did it?
It didn't. I mean, if Prince Harry's intention with this court case was to make him look like a kind of entitled little princeling who doesn't play by the same rules, the mission accomplished. I mean, it actually started on Monday, and yet he didn't show up when he was expected, leading the judge to say with some wry understatement that it was a little surprising that he had chosen not to do that. But as you say, he was in the dock yesterday. He struggled to produce any essential evidence for the phone hacking claims. The KC on the other side essentially pushed him to admit that it was essentially speculation as to where these stories had come from. More embarrassingly, I had to point out that a lot of the stories in the Mirror Group newspapers that he was complaining about, they had previously appeared in other newspapers. So if Harry wanted to make this look like this wasn't a vendetta against the press, it didn't go particularly well. And I dare say that because he's become so accustomed to very kind of soft soap interviews from Oprah Winfrey and the like, coming under sustained cross-examination in the courtroom, he's just gone to pieces in front of that.
Yeah, and the tabloids would have hired very good lawyers, I would imagine. And as you said, he's used to pretty soft interviews. I mean, there was one part of the evidence that I heard today where he was complaining about how he was photographed and talked about being at some fancy Chelsea restaurant. Well, the only problem was the owner of the restaurant was very happy to have Harry there and had told everyone about it, and it had nothing to do with phone tapping and the Mirror, unlawfully tracking him through London.
No, completely. And there were a procession of stories like that where it had to be pointed out to him that, there were quotes in some of these stories from palace sources or from the gentleman in the restaurant, as you mentioned. So I think that the issue here is that this isn't about phone hacking. We all know that. He's been on this vendetta, this kind of crusade against the newspapers for some time. Even his witness statement, his formal witness statement, makes really broad brush extreme claims saying that the media have blood on their hands, suggesting that they've driven people to take their own lives. There's even one section which is absolutely fascinating where he claims that all the stories over the years insinuating that that wasn't necessarily the sharpest tool in the box put him physically at danger. He says, I'm only slightly paraphrasing here, that he could have easily been out on a meeting and someone could have said, I know you're an idiot, and then stab him. This is a man with a very paranoid relationship with the press. You could say that's understandable, being in the glare of the public eye for so long. But I think that's morphed into something a lot more liberal, a lot more personal, and I dare say that's clouding his judgment in terms of how he's conducting himself in these proceedings as well.
And a lot of that, Tom, is irrational. I mean, he said that he thought the people had unlawfully intruded into the life of his late mother, Princess Diana. Now, I'm a lot older than you, Tom. I actually covered a royal tour in Australia in '83 with Diana and Charles when William was just a baby. And I saw the way that Princess Diana actually used the tabloid media. I saw her relationship up close with the photographers from Fleet Street, with the senior royal reporters from Fleet Street, and they were looking after each other. The tabloids were looking after Diana and Charles to some degree, and they were looking after her.
That's completely right. And if he was being honest, there's a very similar story with Harry. Harry complains constantly about media intrusion into his privacy. Harry and Meghan are effectively media influencers, for good and for ill. They're Marmite figures, to put it lightly. But at the same time, they've been invading their own privacy for the entire time that they've been together, whether it's through Spare, the tell-all memoir. I mean, I know more about this man's anatomy than I do my own at this point, having suffered through that particular tome. The Netflix documentaries, the tell-all interviews. This isn't about intrusion. This isn't about privacy. They just want, as many royals before them have often wanted, a press that was tame, that wouldn't criticise them too much, and that would cover them, but only on their own terms. And I dare say that this particular case and all the other cases he has against the British press that are in the offing are driven by that very similar dynamic.
It's going to end in tears for him, isn't it, Tom?
It feels that way. I mean, obviously, he deserves his day in court. What he and the other claimants are alleging could amount to criminal practices. The Mirror Group newspapers have admitted to one case of unlawful activity. But I think the kind of rule with Harry and Meghan, I call it Markle's law at this point, is that the more that the public see of them, the more they see of this public whining and so on, the less they have time for
what?
And I think this trial is going to be another example of that.
Absolutely right, Tom. Great to catch up with you, mate.